Good evening. On behalf of the entire Pennsbury Board of School Directors, we would like to welcome you to the Meet and Greet Community Forum for our final candidate, Dr. Thomas Smith. On Thursday, September 17, 2020, Superintendent William Gretzula announced to the board that he was planning to retire effective June 30, 2021. The board is grateful for Dr. Gretzula's service to our district. Shortly after receiving the announcement from Dr. Gretzula, the Pennsbury Board of School Directors began the superintendent search process with the assistance from the Bucks County Intermediate Unit. Following a comprehensive search process, the board has selected Dr. Smith to serve as the next superintendent of schools for the Pennsbury School District. Dr. Smith's contract for this position will be voted tomorrow at the April 15th board meeting. Dr. Smith will start on or about August 1st, 2021. Let me tell you about the educational background of Dr. Smith. Dr. Smith has worked as a teacher, coach, and at all levels of administration in both small and large school districts. He currently serves as superintendent at Hopewell Valley Regional School District located in Pennington, New Jersey. He also teaches graduate-level courses in education. Dr. Smith holds a bachelor's degree in communications, 2 master's degrees in education from the College of New Jersey, and a doctorate in educational leadership from Seton Hall University. He serves as the president of the Mercer County Administrators Association for the past 7 years and was named Mercer County Superintendent of the Year in 2018. Dr. Smith's recent work has focused on social-emotional learning and providing mental health programs for students. His other efforts include improving the cultural competency of staff and students and improving academic opportunities for all students. He lives with his wife and 3 children in Allentown, New Jersey. Hiring a superintendent is one of the most important responsibilities for us as the school board. As a result, I had appointed my colleague T.R. Kanan as the board liaison for the process and would like to invite him to give you a brief overview of the process that was used to select Dr. Smith as our final candidate. T.R.?
Good evening. Thank you, Christine. A school's superintendent is the top executive of the district. This person runs daily operations while implementing the vision set forth by the school board. On a regular basis, they have to make decisions that impact thousands of students, staff, facilities, and finances. So the board's goal was to find the best person for this top job. And we hired the Bucks County IU as a recruiting partner for this. With their help, we actually came up with a very solid process. First, we wanted to hear from the community on what was important to them. So we conducted a survey to gather feedback on some of the most important things. We received more than 1,100 survey responses, and the board would like to thank our community for providing input into this process. Then we advertised the position locally, statewide, and also nationally. It was open for about a month from January 15th to February 14th, 2021. We received 22 applications for this position from all around the country. The board met to review all of these 22 applications and screen them, and we selected the top 10 to interview for the first round. These interviews were conducted over 2 evenings on March 1st and March 2nd. Following the first round of interviews, the board narrowed the applicant pool to 5 candidates who returned for more thorough and comprehensive second round on March 15th and 17th. Following the second round of interviews, we then invited Dr. Thomas Smith for the third and final round of interview. This was held in person on March 23rd. All previous sessions were virtual. At this session, Dr. Smith made a formal presentation to the board, and we discussed a wide variety of topics. Following this session, an initial offer was made to Dr. Smith, and negotiations began with his attorney on securing an agreement with him to join the Pennsbury School District. The negotiations went very smoothly, and we plan to vote on the contract tomorrow. Now, Dr. Smith is a finalist because in addition to his excellent credentials and experience, he also has the right attitude, temperament, and ideas. Here are some examples he shared with us that, with his permission, I wanted to share today. When somebody decides to leave his school district, he actually meets with them and the families to understand why and see what can be done about making his district a better place. He also partners with community members who own local businesses and see how they can help in the district operations. He also told us that for people who are active on social media and who have some issues with the district, he proactively reaches out, sits down with them, and has been able to convert them into advocates. He not only acknowledged the strengths of Pennsbury, but also knew where more work was needed and is willing to take charge of it. So on behalf of the board, I would like to thank Dr. Mark Hoffman, Rebecca Roberts-Melamis, and Joanne Perotti from the Bucks IU for all their help and assistance in facilitating this search process. I also want to thank our HR Director, Betty Ann Rarick, Supervisor of Communications, Ann Langtree, members of the Technology and Facilities Department for playing a key role in this process and today's forum. It was also great to see two of our students spend their time today and really appreciate them too. So now it's my pleasure to introduce the Executive Director of the Bucks County Intermediate Unit, Dr. Mark Hoffman.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Hoffman, and it is my pleasure to serve as the Executive Director of the Bucks County Intermediate Unit. As Mr. Kanan just said, we had the absolute pleasure of being entertained before this forum kicked off this evening by two juniors from Pennsbury High School. Their names were Ezra Greenberg and Jake Ray. If they're still here, could we just acknowledge their beautiful performance? A little sampling of the incredible arts programs of the Pennsbury School District. So we thank them for volunteering their time this evening to provide us with that entertainment. The Bucks County Intermediate Unit is one of 29 educational service agencies that support the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. In Bucks County, the Bucks County Intermediate Unit serves the 13 school districts, of which Pennsbury is one, the 3 career and technical centers, and countless independent, private, parochial, and non-public schools. As a part of our role as an intermediate unit, we offer supports and services to school districts. And in that catalog of services includes superintendent searches. And so it was our honor to be asked and invited by the Pennsbury School Board to support this process. As both Ms. Toy Dragoni and Mr. Kanan alluded, the school board has several really key critical missions in supporting the community. One of those is identifying, selecting, hiring, supervising, supporting, and providing vision to the school district superintendent. And so how amazing that in a relatively short period of time, the board was able to identify a successor to Dr. Gritzula in Dr. Smith. And we welcome him here tonight. Tonight's presentation, or tonight's events, I should say, are comprised of 3 distinct components. The first component we're going to transition to very shortly, and that will be where I turn the microphone over to Dr. Smith to provide some introductory comments and his first address to the Pennsbury community. Following Dr. Smith's remarks, he and I will sit to my right, to your left, at the table, and we're going to go through some questions and answers that have been submitted by the community. Once we get to those questions and answers, I'll give a little more information about where the questions came from. Following that short Q&A, Dr. Smith will have one more opportunity to address the community, followed by leadership from the board to conclude tonight's event. So really, without further ado, it is my absolute and distinct pleasure to introduce to you for the first time the finalist candidate for the position of superintendent of the Pennsbury School District, Dr. Tom Smith.
Thank you, Dr. Hoffman. The Board of Education, thank you very much for this invitation tonight. I haven't heard applause in so long. It was so nice. All of our meetings are on Zoom. For the community members here, thank you for coming tonight. I really appreciate you being here. I think what I can do is just give you a little snapshot of my life and why I'm here this evening to hopefully learn a little bit about me. I grew up right across the bridge in Ewing, New Jersey. I was the child of a single parent. I share that only because the education wasn't always easy in our household. But it was the teachers and it was the coaches in my life that really kept me on the straight and narrow in moving forward. And because of that, why I chose the career of education. But before that, I graduated high school. I spent a lot of time at the Oxford Valley Mall on Friday nights when that was a thing. I had many friends and relatives who lived in this area, specifically attended Pennsbury. So it's really exciting to be here, and I've heard from many of them, and I'm excited to take on the torch to move forward. I attended college locally, as you heard. I went to, at that time, the Trenton State College. I had a degree in communications with an emphasis in film and television. I got a job after that in New York City. I thought it was my dream job. I worked as a production assistant making TV commercials. But then I would come home on the weekend and I would work with a friend of mine volunteering at Special Olympics. And at that time, I had an epiphany. And I was working with students where I think I was enriching their lives. They were enriching my life. So I went back to school. I went back to school and I became a special educator. And I got a job at a private school right across the bridge again in Trenton. And after that, I worked in a public school, West Windsor-Plainsboro, where I was a teacher, coach, and administrator for several years. During that time, on my first day of work, I met my wife, who was also a special education teacher. We got married along the line. We've had 3 kids. My daughter, putting her on the spot, is here tonight providing moral support. So thank you. But we bought a house in Lower Bucks County up by the Calavita Christmas tree farm, 1850s farmhouse, and fixed that up. Those of you who've lived in an 1850s farmhouse know that there's a lot of work that goes into it, and when we started having children, we moved back to a newer home with that, and there we reside in Allentown, New Jersey. After West Windsor-Plainsboro, I left to take on an administrative role in a small district in New Jersey. And I was lured back to West Windsor-Plainsboro as assistant superintendent. So I worked in a district for several years. I left, and after 5 years, I went back, which was pretty unique, but it was nice. It was a sort of homecoming for me. And then finally, I was offered the position to be superintendent in my current district. I love that district, but for me, the real challenge is here and here tonight. I'd like to just say, I think Pennsbury is an awesome school district. I think it's kind of a diamond in the rough, and I think we work together to polish it and move it forward. And I've heard that from everybody I've interacted with moving forward this evening, is that their goal for us as a district to move forward. And I'm here to help and do everything I can to do that and support the amazing teachers that I've read about, seen, and heard. The administrators who came out tonight, I can't thank you enough for coming out on a rainy Wednesday night to meet me. I really appreciate that. It's been nice. But I think we all share a common vision of where we'd like the district to go. So you'll learn a little bit about me more through the questions, but I just wanted you to get a piece of me as a person, of why I'm in education, why I want to come to Pennsbury, because I really feel that I can make a difference. I feel that, through my epiphany of becoming a special education teacher, making an impact with kids, every decision I've made has been kid-focused and student-focused, and working together. And I've had teachers who have supported that, parents who have supported that, and administrators who have supported that. And the result has been very positive, and I hope to continue that work here. So I think that was my 2-minute time limit you gave me, and I'm more than happy to answer all the questions that you have. Thanks.
So welcome to my living room. We're just going to pretend. Well, hi, everybody. This is now the second component of tonight's 3-part event. The second component is quite literally just a Q&A session between myself and Dr. Smith. The reason we do this is so that you have an opportunity to hear a little bit more from him in a sort of informal way on any number of topics submitted by the community. So just have a couple of notes here about how that survey process worked so that you have a better understanding of where these questions came from. The school board of directors wanted community input in the kinds of questions that we're going to ask you tonight, and so they created an online form through the intermediate unit. That form was made available and advertised to the community back on April 6th, and the form was online and allowed members of the community to submit questions through midnight of this past Sunday, the 11th. So during that collection period, that window of opportunity to submit a question, 38 different community members submitted questions for your consideration. Those 38 individuals submitted a total of 58 questions, because folks could submit, of course, more than one. We don't have time tonight to go through 58 questions, and of course there was some similarity between the questions. And so it was my job to sort them for themes. And so that's what I'm going to present to you tonight. 10 questions that represent thematically those 58 questions. Also, some of those questions are better suited for the current administration. They really weren't up to you, sir, in your role as incoming superintendent. They were really about questions specific to those parents. And so those specific questions have been referred to the administration. And of course, you're going to get a copy of everything as well, so that you have a sense of who asked what, and if there's something specific that you'd like to follow up on, you can do that.
Got it.
So really, without further ado, why don't we just hop right into it? We got 10 questions.
Got it.
We'll spend a couple minutes on each one, and quite literally, as we go through this, we'll just keep it informal. Does that work?
Sure.
All right, perfect. Okay, so Dr. Smith, several community members submitted questions to you for your attention that speak to your entry plan. So can you share a little bit more about how you're going to approach your first year as superintendent in Pennsbury? For example, how will you get to know the community, and how will you begin to establish and identify priorities for the district in your tenure?
Great. So thanks for your question, and thanks for the opportunity again to answer. So that's, I think any good superintendent, as they enter into a district, develops a plan. I have a plan that I'll share with the Board of Education, but to give you some highlights, my plan is really to become engaged in the community, to meet with key stakeholders during that time, to meet with our administrative staff, to meet with our teachers as appropriate, and making sure that I'm not redoing work that they've already done, and understanding that they have dreams that they want to take their schools or take their programs to. So I have a thorough understanding of that. I really have to commend the board. They did a work through the intermediate unit prior to that, developing a strategic plan for the district. So it's important to acknowledge and understand that and continue on that plan, and making sure those topics are continued and those issues are addressed. But for me, a successful first year will be that I'm a part of the community. I've been to as many events as humanly possible to make sure that I've contacted all the key stakeholders in the community, mayors in addition, and probably most importantly is developing a relationship with the board, understanding their vision for the district too, more than we've already discussed, and then working to implement that vision over that. You can't do it all. First year is really the getting to know you part, but I don't like to sit still, so I do try to work with folks to try to move initiatives forward.
Thanks for that answer. Question number 2. Dr. Smith, several community members submitted questions that were focused on your academic vision for the school district. They want to know about your ideas specific to the core academic components of the district's curriculum, its assessment strategy. How are you going to evaluate the rigor of the instruction and the kinds of things that are happening? Can you talk a little bit about the vision you bring to instruction?
Sure. And make no mistake, again, I feel I wouldn't be here if I didn't think Pennsbury is a fantastic school district. While I was milling about earlier this evening, several parents came up and said how happy they were with the district and how successful their children were going through the district. I do think one of the struggles with a large school district is sometimes you operate as a district of schools rather than a school district. And I think that's really where the area of focus should be, is ensuring that there's a consistent vision for education, for curriculum across the district, that's being implemented, and that folks have the flexibility to implement it as they see fit also. I've implemented a 5-year curriculum review cycle in a previous district that's worked out well, where you brought in curriculum area experts, parents, teachers, sometimes students, depending on the program, and looking at the program soup to nuts. Take mathematics and seeing how that scope and sequence from kindergarten to 12th grade, how our students are progressing, not only in ABC school, but in all of our schools. So that's a very important part of education, obviously. And again, I want to commend, Pennsbury's done some great work in that. I know that they've already started to work at their curriculum development program using the backwards design program through Jay McTighe. So that's something, having worked through that previously, I think that's something we can capitalize on together and help move the district forward.
Thanks for that. Yep. So Dr. Smith, this is a long question.
Okay.
So it's actually a long preamble to a short question.
Okay.
All right. So the pandemic was the theme, of course, of a number of questions. In particular, the impact of COVID-19 on instruction. Community members are interested in learning more about what the fall might look like in Pennsbury under your tenure. Will it, for example, questions were like, will it be in person 5 days a week? Will there be hybrid options available? Will there be live streaming options for students at home to live stream into the classroom? Will there be a virtual option for students that wish to remain at home? So you haven't started yet, and so I'd rather focus the spirit of those questions at a little bit of a higher level.
Okay.
Recognizing the interest of the community in what school will look like this fall. What lessons learned from your current position, in your current superintendency, will you bring to Pennsbury? And how will that experience begin to shape Pennsbury's response to the pandemic for the return to school this fall when you are in charge?
Got it. So one thing I think we've all learned is that kids are incredibly resilient through this, and that we need to acknowledge that. And acknowledge that for some students, this hasn't been a bad experience. For some students, and I can speak personally, it hasn't been a great experience. I think we need to take the good that it's occurred, and one of the things I've heard from many parents is, like parent-teacher conferences, it was nice not having to take a half day from work and I could do it virtually. Sure. So simple things like that. Why not take those things that worked well and capitalize on them and moving forward? Education has to change from this, whether it's in Pennsbury or whether it's in any district in America. I think we have to learn from what has worked, we have to reflect on that, and then we have to change to reflect that. And I think that's been the big, I think, learning or lesson for me moving forward, is that there's some good things that came out of this. And I think we have to look at that. And whether it's, the high school students being able to sleep a little later, they seem to be happier and more focused, or it is some of the logistics of meetings and things like that being virtually, that's been helpful. But also the flexibility of students being able to come in and out of a classroom, looking at that. I know it's daunting, it's been daunting for teachers to do that, and I think we can look at that, but had we said that if it were not a pandemic, we never would have been switched so quickly to online education. And again, I think everybody should be commended for how far they've come, but recognizing that we can take some of that good as we move forward.
It's that old cliche, necessity being the mother of
Exactly.
invention or innovation, something like that, right?
I mean, every school in America pivoted in a matter of days, and for the vast majority did a great job.
Well, thanks for that. We look forward to you bringing those lessons learned in another community to Bucks County. As you know, we have a strong network of school leaders in Bucks County. We navigated this pandemic together in Bucks County, and so your voice at that table will be welcome.
I appreciate that.
Of course. Several parents wanted to know more about your philosophy of education as it relates to serving students with IEPs, those would be students in special education programs, so any wide number of disabilities or learning differences, and then also specific to gifted IEPs. Okay. So could you talk about that continuum of specialized support?
Absolutely. So obviously, as I shared earlier, that's an area that's near and dear to my heart. Being a special education teacher for a portion of my career, my wife being a learning consultant now, having been a special ed teacher. These are the students we really work hard for and make sure that they are provided opportunities to be successful. I was a special education teacher where I literally taught in the boiler room, and I had to fight to get my class out of that. And we've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go for where we are. But I think that providing opportunities in the least restrictive environment, and providing support so students are successful is really my philosophy. It's like a good challenge for students,
Sure.
Challenge with support. I think they've been successful, or they would be, I've seen success through that. On the flip side, having supervised a gifted and talented program in a couple of districts over my career, one of the things I think we fall into a lot of times is when you have students who are in a G&T program, the default is to give them more work, not different work. So sometimes you either don't identify kids who I affectionately call, messy learners, who are operating on a whole different plane but don't fit inside our construct in education because they might not do their homework right or on the right way, or that they're smart enough to say, well, wait a second, if I'm good in math, so I'm in a higher level math class, I just get to do more math? Why not different math? So that's something I think I've learned through my career, is really bringing those students in. As I affectionately called, messy learners, as we developed a STEM program for our students, the kids excelled when you took away those barriers. And these were kids who were not, they were not successful if you said, okay, you're in advanced level math, you get to do 50 more math problems tonight. Because they were smart enough to go, well, that's not a bonus, that's just more work. But when you gave them a different environment to show their passion, they really excelled. So I think that's something else I've learned through that is, it can't just be more, it has to be different for those students. And you really have to capitalize on providing both students opportunities with supports.
Well, thanks. And if you can believe it, we're on question 5.
Okay, am I going too fast?
No, you're almost done. Right? Dr. Smith, several community members have submitted questions about the current culture of the school district. With that in mind, can you share more about your vision for building trust and transparency with the district's many disparate, diverse stakeholder groups?
Absolutely, and I could just share a personal experience that in my current district, prior to my arrival, there were 17 superintendents in 25 years. So I understand trust or lack of trust. I understand questioning of vision, lack of vision. What I think I've been able to do in the last 12 years is develop trust with key stakeholders to establish a vision, to move people forward. For me, and I said this in my interview, we saw transparency before it was the buzzword. If I can't stand up in front of a crowded auditorium and justify why a decision was made, it shouldn't have been made. I'm not one to hide behind a letter just sending to the community and just saying, well, this is over. I do put myself out there because, I'm passionate about what I do. I believe in what I say, and it's important for people to see that. If we're out there, want to be out there for the right reason. And something else I do, and I'm not saying I think the decision making might be a little different here, but like on snow days, they're never popular calls, but I would always answer the phone in my office because it wasn't fair for my secretary to get yelled at by a community member. So it was my decision. I take the heat, and I'm there to answer the phone. So that's just one small example that I stand before you with an idea, with a vision, that I have to back that up and show you the reason why. And I've never hidden behind a decision or thrown something out in paper.
Well, thanks for that.
Yeah.
A few community members asked questions about delaying school start times. Mm-hmm. So that's another spirit or strand of questions that you're not in the position yet. And so for you to comment, I think, on what will happen here this fall, it might be premature for me to ask you that. Instead, can you share your experience researching delayed school start times and how you might approach the topic of delaying school start times in Pennsbury once you assume the position here as superintendent?
So just one thing that we've worked on is nomenclature that, so to give you some quick background, is I've done 3 reviews in 3 different districts, and we're closer now than I think ever been before because the research is so clear that the benefits of high school students, the need for extra time. And I've had an expert come in from the American Association of Pediatrics to talk about it, and it is clear. And I think one thing, another lesson learned through the pandemic is, and having a high schooler, the extra half hour's sleep does make a difference in their life. One of the things, going back to nomenclature, is in many districts the change is not a delay for both. It might be earlier for one and,
Sure.
and a movement in the other. So I just wanted to be clear on that because we get caught up in that. Because, you know, when we had a committee called Later Start Time Committee, and it's not later for everybody. It could potentially not be later for anybody. But this is an area of personal interest for me. I believe in it. I think there's logistical challenges. You know, I know that transportation, there's a lot of students to transport here, and that does play into it. Obviously, sports always play into it, and after-school activities. They have to be part of the conversation. But there's districts that have done it. They've done it successfully. It's not as nebulous as it was 10 years ago when I had my first review of it. I think now it's just a matter of the doing it, because and it's not easy. It's change. No one likes change, but there's also opportunities for doing different things too. Going back to what we learned from this, you know, could you do a period of hybrid in the morning for kids so they wouldn't have to get on the bus, or staggering things? There's all kinds of different scenarios that can be discussed to kind of space it out.
Before the pandemic in March of last year, for the previous year, the superintendent group and board members from across the county actually convened in a sort of change school start time study group.
Yes.
And actually there was a commission chartered by the governor here 2 years ago to actually explore the topic and provide research. So I imagine once the pandemic resolves itself and we get back into some normal routine, I imagine that will be a topic not only here in Pennsbury, but it will resurface elsewhere. So you'll be in good company exploring that with the other superintendents, I imagine.
Yeah, it's just a shame though, because I think right now, if you're going to make a schedule change, everybody's life is in a little upheaval. It would be an opportune time to do it, but I also know that there's a lot of logistics that you can't just throw in May.
Absolutely. So Dr. Smith, several community members posed questions about equity. Mm-hmm. And for each of those questions, equity meant something a little different, right? It's a broad topic, and sometimes it has, you talked about nomenclature, definitional or operational definitions for that term in a school leadership context. So rather than ask each of those questions, let's just keep it general for the purpose of the forum, because this will no doubt be another topic that you're going to have to dive deeply in your role as superintendent. So could you give the community a sense of your experience guiding school systems through equity-related initiatives and equity-related work?
So I've had a lot of experience. This also is an area of interest for me, and an area of passion. It started with something on the very low level of kids not understanding the lives of other kids. And one thing that I put together that I was very proud of is I brought in students from every high school in Mercer County, and we called it the Day of Dialogue, to talk about the challenges. And my current county is very diverse, from inner city, being Trenton, to Princeton and Hopewell. But when you brought kids into a room and they talked about what they experienced in school, what opportunities there were, no matter what your feelings are, what your definition definitions are, or is of equity specifically, is you see that there are differences. There are differences, and I think at its basic level, I think equity is ensuring that there's opportunities for everyone, and there's supports for everyone to be successful. I have to say that Pennsbury's taken a bold step. I was just talking to your director of equity beforehand. I look forward to working with her. But that bold step and looking at the data, I mean, that's really impressive, putting ourselves out there and talking about it. That's the big challenge, because everyone recognizes there's changes that need to be made, or there's things you need to address, but not everyone shies away from the conversation. And it's not an easy conversation to have, and it takes time. Talking about building a trust, going back. Yeah. It's important to build that trust, knowing that you're not here to say that you're doing things wrong. It's about how can we work together to move us all forward. And so that's what I found. It's an ongoing process. Continue to work. It can be an emotional process for some, but I think when you have people in a room and you recognize that we can all make mistakes, we're all here to move forward, sure, that it's helpful. And that's one thing I found is, if you have people from disparate views, if you can bring them together and have a conversation, you can move forward, and it's always been helpful.
to give you a sense of the signposts, we're on question 8. So we got 3 questions.
Okay.
A few community members were interested in their questions about your approach to supporting the social, emotional, and mental health needs of the school district's students and staff. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Another area of interest for me, that is something we started before it was, the buzzword. SEL, we didn't even know what we called it. We called it, mindfulness and student supports through that. One thing I think is clear right now is that students are under more stress than they've ever been before. Our staff members are under more stress than before. Folks might say it's really not the school's responsibility or the district's responsibility as an employer. I don't agree with that. I think that schools are a unique animal, and that we are a family and we are a living and breathing unit. So it's very important to ensure that students' mental health needs are supported, their emotional needs are supported, our staff members' emotional needs and social emotional supports are supported, and by working together. We started programs, and it's been some folks kind of laugh it off, but the data is pretty clear. We started using mindfulness practices on our elementary level. Well, discipline went down. Behaviors in classrooms improved. So, you can see the benefits of it, and you have happier students. What more could you want? And I think that for any student to know that they are cared for is a good thing. And if that is the message through SEL that we send to social emotional learning,
Sure.
That we can send to students and to families, is that we're here to help, we're here to support them. I think that's what I've crafted my vision to be in. And it takes all different forms, everything from therapy dogs to mindfulness to significant supports or supports for significant mental health needs, that entire continuum for our students.
So Dr. Smith, you mentioned mindfulness a couple of times there. Some folks might mistake that for meditation.
Correct.
Could you just give folks that might not know what mindfulness is in the context of school, could you just give
Yeah.
them a basic idea of what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, on the elementary level, it's really just now that kids are so screen time oriented, just giving them time not to be spoken to or talked to, just letting them breathe, and not having, an onerous expectation upon them. It's kind of what we did when we were young, where you had time by yourself. But now our days are typically so structured that we've lost that. So kids don't know how to just say, okay, I can do something I want to do right now.
Thanks for that.
Yep. And thanks for clarification. I appreciate it.
No, of course. Some folks that submitted questions were interested in the school district's infrastructure and facilities. So the actual physical plant, the buildings themselves. There were lots of questions about how you'll do an analysis of the state of the schools from an infrastructure and facilities perspective, physically. Can you share your experience? And of course, this is like the other questions. You haven't started yet.
Yeah,
I know you've driven around the
understood.
school district a few
Yep.
times and doing
Yep.
your homework, and I know
Yep.
you know where the schools are, but
Yep.
I don't believe you've been in all of them
I
yet,
have not,
of course,
correct.
and you haven't looked at them clearly with the superintendent's lens yet.
Correct.
So so again, knowing that, could you just give the folks watching and the folks that are here
Yep.
a sense of your experiences as a superintendent leading large system-wide renovation or new construction projects and efforts? And then also, could you just give a sense to the folks how you'll evaluate the physical plant, the infrastructure, and the facilities?
Sure. So again, I want to commend the district, because I know there's been work done in identifying a lot of projects in the district. I do agree that schools need work here. Fortunately, I've been involved and personally responsible for 3 large-scale referendum projects. Now, in New Jersey, it's a little different. You have to go out for a vote in referendum, so I had to go out and present it to the community also for the vote. But I was specifically responsible for meeting with contractors, overseeing those monthly meetings, identifying areas. I don't know if I shared this in my opening, but for a good portion of my life when I was teaching, I was also working as a carpenter. So installing custom kitchens in Lower Bucks County also. So I know enough to answer the right questions. I've been around enough new construction to know areas to look for. I'm not an expert by any means, but I know enough to recognize that somebody's pulling the wool over our eyes, or this isn't right, or the lifespan of a boiler or something like that, because I've had experience with all of that. In my current district, we have 3 buildings that are almost 100 years old with that, so all the challenges about that. In previous districts, we did major renovations with adding basically the second, an additional size of a high school, and all the challenges of meeting old and new and all of that. So I'm pretty confident in that area. Again, I'm not an expert, but I also know enough to know that somebody's not being straight with me with that. And I do think we have to recognize that schools are the basis of a community. They're used a lot. They're used outside of the school day for a number of activities, whether it's inside or outside the school. And there's, I think, a responsibility that we have to ensure that those schools are in good working order for not only our students, our staff, but also for the community.
Thanks.
Yep.
Sir, this is the last question.
Okay.
A number of questions were submitted from the community specific to school district finances. Can you share a little bit more about how you'll approach the fiscal components of your job as superintendent? What can community members that are focused on tax increases, district budgets, and financial accountability and financial transparency expect to see from you as superintendent during your tenure here in Pennsbury?
One thing I'd like to acknowledge too, again, is you have a very strong business office here in Pennsbury, very strong. So I've done a lot of work, I've researched that. The school business administrator here is renowned and has a great reputation. That being said, I also recognize that being a public school, we take the lion's share of property taxes to run them, and people have a vested interest in where their tax dollars are going. They want to see a return on their investment. That is either in academic prowess or programs and supports for kids. That is making sure that our buildings are in good shape for our community and for our students. Going back to our conversation about transparency, here again is, and we've done it, I've done it in several districts, is, laid out our budget for community members. You want to come, and we've put in morning sessions, evening sessions. Anybody wants to come in, can look at the budget, ask any question they want. Here again, they're taxpayers. We bear a great responsibility for the tax dollars, making sure that we are good stewards of those tax dollars. But most districts are heavily audited. Your business office has been awarded for the quality of their programs. So there's nothing to hide. It's really just part of that is education. None of us like paying taxes, particularly property taxes, and I understand that. But what I try to do with folks is help them understand that this is the value you get for your money. And going back to facilities, the quality of schools, I don't think there's a bigger correlation to property values. And that is something, making sure that we are all in the right place, spending money wisely where it's needed, and making sure people feel as good as possible about that.
Excellent. Well, those are 10 questions for Dr. Smith. Could we give him an applause? It's not easy. It's not easy to sit here and have a conversation in front of folks, also knowing that you're being streamed.
Yes.
Which is a great opportunity for me to transition to the third component of tonight's event, the third and final component. And before I do that, I just want to acknowledge a few folks that are working behind the scenes to make sure that tonight's events were successful. Of course, the amazing physical plant facilities operations teams in Pennsbury that made it so that this room is beautiful and accommodating and welcoming. The Pennsbury administrative team that made sure that every need was accounted for and every logistic component was accounted for so that we were safe tonight, following COVID protocols, and that also our guests felt welcome here online. Of course, the team from the intermediate unit and from the Pennsbury School District to help us with our audiovisual needs. So thank you, Tim, thank you, Dan, thank you, John, for making sure that the folks here and also online can see and hear us. That's important because this is being recorded for the folks that can't be here with us now. Of course, to the Pennsbury School Board, again, on behalf of the intermediate unit, thank you for allowing us to be a part of this process. We appreciate being involved, and it was really our pleasure, Joanne, Rebecca, and I, as well as the entire intermediate unit team, to help support this process. You've got a winner here, and I feel like tonight our work is done. This has been a successful process, and it's been our honor to be with you throughout the process. Dr. Smith, the third component of tonight's event is for you to offer some concluding remarks. I imagine you'll do that from the floor. After you do that, the board leadership will make some concluding remarks, and then the evening is over.
Okay.
All right. So again, we'll transition.
Okay.
And the floor is yours.
All right, thanks. Thank you again, Dr. Hoffman. I appreciate it. And I'd just like to thank the Board of Education also for your confidence in me and my abilities to bring Pennsbury to the next level. It really is appreciated, and I hope to do you proud through that. You know that I will be committed to this district and making sure that every student succeeds, and our teachers are supported and our administrators are supported. And I look forward to working closely with you and getting to know all of you as we work, go on this journey together. The administrators are here tonight. Thank you again for coming out on a rainy Wednesday night. It's much appreciated. I enjoyed the conversations that I had before this evening. It was really nice, and I look forward to spending time with you in the coming weeks and months as we work together. And the community members, I'm happy to stick around if anybody has any specific questions. You'll find me hopefully approachable and open to any conversation of topics. I'm happy to share my thoughts on a number of things. So I think that's hopefully will be the hallmark of my time here, is that I'm approachable, I'm here to listen, and I want to work collectively to make sure that Pennsbury succeeds into the future. You have that commitment from me. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
I don't have a microphone on me, so I have to come up here. So thank you very much, Dr. Smith and Dr. Hoffman. The Pennsbury Board of School Directors want to thank the staff and community members that attended this most important forum this evening in person, and those that watched it live streamed tonight. We thank you for supporting our superintendent search. Later this week, a link will be available to watch the forum for those that were unable to watch it tonight on our Pennsbury website. Thank you all, and thank you to the intermediate unit for managing this for us, and everyone have an enjoyable rest of your evening.